Michael, a middle-aged disabled man, arrives at a small diner in Lincoln, Nebraska, late one afternoon. Sitting in a wheelchair, he moved confidently and quietly, unaware that he was about to be the target of harassment. The restaurant, which is a frequent gathering place for locals and long-distance drivers, still has a peaceful atmosphere with the sound of raspy conversations and jingling dishes. But when Michael arrived at the parking lot, that silence was quickly broken. A group of bikers leaned against their motorcycles, laughed loudly and began to notice Michael. The atmosphere here instantly changed, signaling an unpleasant situation waiting for him. As Michael rolled toward the door of the restaurant, he quickly realized that the attention of the bikers in the parking lot had turned to him. A loud laugh full of sarcasm from one of the men, accompanied by a loud teasing. "Hey, Roland Thunder." Those words were like a knife that tore through the peaceful space of the late afternoon. Michael didn't react, his eyes still staring straight ahead, his expression calm, as if those words were not worth his attention. But in his heart, a silent tension rose. The group of bikers, with no intention of stopping, began to move closer. A tall man, wearing a leather jacket with the words "Outlaw Rebels" on his back, separated from the group and stood across Michael's path. "Hey, where are you going to go in such a hurry? Or is it just a little bit of a walk?" he said, his tone arrogant, accompanied by laughter from his companions. Michael slowly stopped the car, his hands resting lightly on the rim of the wheel, clearly feeling the tense air that was enveloping him. He didn't answer, just looked at the man in front of him with cold eyes, but there was no fear. Another biker, thinner, with tattoos all over his arms, stepped up and laughed mockingly. "Hey, don't say you're going to run over us in a wheelchair." He made a gesture that simulated a rolling wheel rudely, causing his group to laugh out loud. Michael took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. He knew very well that he could not confront them directly, but he also could not let himself be subdued. Michael tried to roll over, hoping to get away from the nuisance, but the tall man immediately stepped in the way, his face showing a cold smile. "Slowly, it's just a little joke. Why do you have to be so rude?" His voice sounded more coercive than joking. Michael sensed the eyes of the other group of bikers watching his every move, forming a silent circle. Although the atmosphere was getting heavier, Michael still did not show any signs of trembling. He kept his voice calm, but there was a hint of determination. "I don't want to cause trouble." His words seemed to make the biker group stop for a brief moment, but the silence was quickly filled with ironic laughter. Michael, at this moment, sensed a curious gaze from inside the restaurant, where a few customers were glancing out, but no one seemed willing to intervene. In Michael's heart, a feeling of anger mixed with helplessness arose. He was used to the judgmental and contemptuous eyes, but this did not make him any less heartbroken. However, he also knew that, in the face of people like this, staying calm was his strongest weapon. With that in mind, he slowly reached into his pocket, preparing to take an action that would change the whole situation. Michael took a deep breath, trying to keep his hands from shaking as he slowly reached into his pocket. The bikers immediately noticed. Their laughter stopped for a moment. The gaze of the tall man in the leather jacket became sharper, and he tilted his head to look at Michael with suspicion. "What are you going to do? Call the police?" "There's nothing they can do here," he snarled, trying to sound confident, but there was clearly a hint of worry in his eyes. Michael remained calm, his hand pulling out a mobile phone. Not paying attention to the taunts around him, he quickly glanced through the contacts and then pressed the call button. The phone was pressed to his ear, and his voice sounded calm with just a few simple words. "I need your help." Without saying a word, Michael hung up the phone and put the phone in his pocket. The inherent confidence of the biker group began to waver. A young man in the group, with tattoos along his arm, glanced around and spoke up, trying to hide the anxiety in his tone. "Hey, who are you calling? Don't tell me that your mighty brothers are on their way here." He laughed loudly, but the laughter sounded hollow and unnatural. Michael didn't answer. Instead, he rolled a little, placing himself against the wall of the restaurant, as if he had all the time in the world. His strangely calm attitude made the biker group even more confused. The tall man grumbled, "Do you think a few phone calls can scare us? There's no one here to protect you." But his confidence was gradually dissipating. A strange atmosphere enveloped the parking lot. Michael didn't need to say anything more. He just looked at them with calm eyes. But those eyes contained a power that made the whole group of bikers feel uncomfortable. And then, in the distance, the sound of the engine sounded. A low, powerful sound like thunder from the horizon. The bikers' heads immediately turned in the direction of the sound. Their expressions changed from mocking to confused, and then to real worry. Michael still sat there, silent and calm, but a faint smile appeared at the corner of his lips, signaling a complete change in the situation. The sound of the engine was getting louder and louder, like a storm was coming. The late afternoon sun shone down, scattering the chromium on dozens of rushing motorcycles. From the main road, a powerful convoy appeared, moving synchronously like a unified block. The drivers wore black leather, each with a shield-shaped symbol and wings, and the prominent inscription, "Guardians of the Road." Their presence was overwhelming and majestic, making the space seem to stop for a moment. Michael was still sitting by the wall of the restaurant. His eyes calmly turned towards the convoy. The people in the biker group now no longer seemed confident. The tall man leading the group took a step back, his eyes clearly showing a look of confusion. Another member whispered, "I don't like this at all." As soon as his voice ended, the guardians entered the parking lot, stopping perfectly in line, as if they had done this hundreds of times. The whole parking lot fell silent, only the sound of the engine gradually turning off. One by one, the Guardian members stepped out of the car, their leather boots touching the gravel to form a hard, steady sound. They don't need to speak up or show any threats. It was their unity and majesty that silenced the group of bikers opposite. Leading the Guardian was a tall man with a silver beard and sharp eyes. He walked over to Michael, stopped right in front of him and asked softly, "Are you okay, buddy?" His deep voice rang out, although not loud but full of power. Michael nodded slightly, his voice calm. "It's fine now." The silver-bearded man turned around. His eyes coldly swept over the group of bikers. Every word he said was slow, but full of weight. "What is this? Do you think it's fun to harass a man in a wheelchair?" The biker group did not dare to answer. The tall man, who had once been the most aggressive, now lowered his face and glanced at his companions worriedly. But the Silverbeard's silence was more frightening than any threat. The guardians behind him formed a protective circle around Michael, his eyes cold but without saying anything more. At this moment Michael spoke up. His voice was calm but enough to make the biker group unavoidable. "Do you think I'm here alone?" He paused for a moment, his eyes full of calmness but made the other party irrefutable. "You only dare to fight with people you think are weak. But you were wrong." The silver-bearded man's eyes gleamed with pride as he heard Michael's words. He turned to the group of bikers and said in a low but firm voice, "Now you will do two things. First, apologize to this man in a decent way. Second, leave here and never reoffend." The biker group was silent. No one dared to argue. The figure of the guardians, with their steadfastness and solidarity, completely crushed their extravagance. The air in the parking lot became heavy, as if the whole world was holding its breath and waiting. The once arrogant bikers now bowed their heads, their faces confused and scared. The man in the lead, who had been the most aggressive before, took a deep breath but his voice was still shaking. We're sorry." His voice was so small that it was hard to hear, as if every word had to be uttered. Michael sat still, his cold eyes staring directly at him. "It doesn't sound very sincere," he said, his voice deep and clear, not loud but enough to make the group of bikers stop. The silver-bearded man, the leader of the Guardian group, took a step forward. He crossed his arms in front of his chest, his sharp eyes looking at the leader of the biker group. His voice was not high but powerful. "It's best for you to say it again. This time it's clearer and more honest." The man leading the biker group swallowed dryly. His eyes looked at his companions in confusion, but none of them dared to speak. He took a deep breath, this time louder and clearer. "We're sorry. We shouldn't be harassing you." The rest of the biker group, although reluctantly, followed him in repeating the apology, their voices lacking in the slightest arrogance. Every sentence he said seemed to take away some of their previous arrogance. Michael nodded slightly, his eyes still cold. "I accept the apology," he said slowly. "But remember, you won't have a chance to correct your mistakes if you reoffend." The group of bikers nodded their heads, not daring to argue again. They gradually retreated towards their motorcycles, their eyes smudged like children who had just been scolded. None of them dared to look directly at the Guardians or Michael anymore. When they started the car, they left in a hurry, the sounds of the engine now sounding no longer majestic, but just prolonged shame. When the group of bikers disappeared, the parking lot became quiet. The silver-bearded man turned to look at Michael, nodding with silent respect. The other Guardians stood as silent as a wall, their eyes following Michael not out of pity, but of respect for someone who had stood firm in the face of adversity. When the group of bikers had left, the atmosphere in the parking lot seemed to be lighter, but at the same time it was filled with a deep sense of the meaning of what had just happened. Michael looked up at the silver-bearded man, his eyes gleaming with appreciation and determination. "Thank you," Michael said, his voice warm but no less decisive. "You not only stood by me, but also reminded me that true strength lies in unity." The silver-bearded man smiled, a smile that contained both empathy and pride. "Our brothers have always been here," he said, his voice firm. "When one person in the community needs help, it all stands up together. That's not just the principle, it's the reason we exist." The other members of the Guardian group also nodded, their eyes shining with silent pride. Their leather jackets with the words "Guardians of the Road" are not only symbolic, but also a reminder that in this world, sometimes the only thing that is needed to fight injustice is a group of people who are willing to stand on the right side. Michael looked at them, a slight smile fleeting on his face. "You gave me more confidence that no matter how difficult the world is, there are always people who are willing to do the right thing." He paused, his voice lowered, carrying a sincere feeling. "Not everyone is as lucky as I am today. But if each of us stands up for the right, we can make a difference." The silver-bearded man placed his hand on Michael's shoulder, a gesture that didn't need words but was meaningful. "You're not alone, Michael. No one should have to face injustice alone. Today is not just your story, but a lesson for all of us." As the Guardians prepare to leave, they leave behind not only the roar of motorcycles, but also a clear message. Solidarity is not only strength, but also how we protect each other, how we make the world a better place. Michael sat there, watching them disappear, his heart filled with gratitude and hope. He knew that their actions today not only changed his situation, but also inspired everyone who witnessed it. As the sound of the Guardian team's engines faded into space, the parking lot became quiet again, as a new part of the memory had just been marked. Michael sat still in his seat, his eyes looking out over the road ahead, where the cars were still passing but there was no rush or pressure. He could feel the change in air, a sense of relief, as if his previous worries had been relieved. Today he has not only faced harassment, but also witnessed the power of solidarity, of the community standing up for the right. Every member of the Guardian community, their words and actions carry a clear message. No one faces injustice alone. Michael feels lucky to be among people who are not only strong but also compassionate, ready to fight for justice. The silver-bearded man's words echoed in his head. No one should have to face injustice alone. Michael understands that this is not just a comfort, but a call to action. Although in life we sometimes feel small and lonely in the face of difficulties, but with the support of those around us, we can overcome all challenges. With a slight smile, Michael turned and walked into the diner. The curious eyes of the customers, the buzzing conversations in the air, all could not hide the change in his mood. He won not because he had to fight external enemies, but because he maintained his dignity and belief in justice. When he sat down at the table, he felt the cup of coffee in his hand warmer than ever. It is not only the warmth from drinks, but the warmth of a community, of people who do not leave each other in difficult moments. Michael reflects on what he has experienced, realizing that it is from moments of challenge that the lessons of perseverance and solidarity become valuable baggage for life. Although there are many difficulties ahead today, Michael knows that he is not alone. And even though life can be challenging, solidarity and compassion will always be the strength to help people overcome it all. The lesson that Michael draws from today's experience is not only a lesson in resilience and courage, but also a profound lesson in the power of solidarity and humanity. He realized that in life, sometimes we don't need to fight alone to overcome difficulties, but we need to know how to seek support from those around us. In the face of injustice, silence and loneliness only make the problem worse. Instead, it is only when we stand together and defend the right together that true power can be promoted. Today's meeting with the Guardian team not only changed Michael's view of the world around him, but also affirmed that none of us should suffer injustice alone. Everyone can be a part of the community, and every small action can make a big difference. Defenders of the right don't have to be people with superior strength or special talents, but just people who are willing to stand up when they see something wrong, who don't turn their backs on each other when they need support. Michael also learned that sometimes, calmness and steadfastness in difficult times are the most powerful weapons. He did not resist, did not get angry or feared, but simply stood by his dignity and trusted the community to help when needed. It was that calm attitude that prevented the other group of bikers from continuing their harassment. The confidence in upholding the principle, no matter the circumstances, sends a clear message. There is no room for encroachment and injustice. In the end, the biggest lesson that Michael learned was the need to always maintain his own value. Life can be difficult, challenging, or even cruel, but as long as we don't give up on ourselves, don't be discouraged by contempt or intrusion from others, we will find the strength to overcome it. Perseverance, self-esteem, and solidarity are the keys to overcoming all obstacles in life. As the Guardian's engines faded, the air in the parking lot became quiet again, as if everything had calmed down. Michael sat back in his chair, watching the departing convoy fill, a sense of relief and serenity filling his mind. Although there are still old wounds of hurt, he now clearly feels that he is not alone. The people around him, people who carry the spirit of solidarity and protection of justice, have helped him realize the hidden power in each individual when it comes to standing up for the right. He turned to look at the diner, the customers who had returned to their lives, but in their hearts, perhaps they had all learned a profound lesson in courage and respect. Michael entered the restaurant. His eyes gave her a gentle smile, different from the previous worry. She looked at him, her eyes full of interest, but she didn't need to ask any more questions. "Is everything okay?" she asked softly, noticing the change in his attitude. Michael smiled, responding with warmth. "Yes, it's fine. It's just a bit of a misunderstanding." He sat at the familiar table, where cups of coffee were still waiting for him as always. The feeling of peace rushed back when he took his first sip of coffee. The warmth of the coffee spread throughout his body, as if to relieve all tension. Michael thought about all that he had been through. He not only feels support from those around him, but also realizes the true value of maintaining self-esteem and not backing down in the face of challenges. Today, he has not only triumphed over harassment, but also overcome his fear of loneliness and injustice. Looking out the window, the evening light falling on the silent parking lot, Michael knew that although life would still be difficult, he was ready to face them. And more importantly, he knows that in moments like this, when he stands up for himself, he will always have a community that is ready to be by his side, to overcome any challenge together. The echoing sounds of the engine from afar no longer bring a sense of fear, but a reminder of unity, consistency, and strength in each person. As the sky outside gradually turned dark, Michael sat there, silently contemplating all that had happened. The meeting with the Guardian team and the courage he showed today was not only a personal victory, but also a powerful message to everyone. Solidarity and courage can change any situation. In this world, we sometimes face great trials and cruelty from the weak, but as long as one person stands firm, one person resolutely upholds dignity, there will be a community that is willing to stand by it. The message he realized was this: none of us are alone, and we must not bow down to injustice no matter what. Michael understands that true strength does not come from prominence or power, but from the ability to stand firm, uphold core values, and know that, when needed, there will be others who will face difficulties with him. It is the strength of community, the value of solidarity not only in difficult moments, but in every step of life. He also realized that while everyone can face challenges and feel lonely at times, when we are consistent and don't let fear succumb, support from those around us will come at the right time when we need it. People like the Guardian have taught him that compassion, respect, and the spirit of protecting each other are the real strengths we should aim for. When all stand together, nothing can subdue us. In the end, Michael's message is that every action, no matter how small, can make a big difference. We don't need to change the whole world, we just need to change the way we treat each other. And that is the first step in creating a just and compassionate society.